Welcome to Wide Awake Stories from Insomniac.
Now, here's a little story I got to tell about three you know so well.
Welcome to the church of what's happening now. Wide Awake Stories
from Insomniac.
This is a journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new value, and a new experience.
Broadcasting from the Insomniac HQ. This is Wide Awake Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of Wide Awake Stories. Happy birthday to us. 12 episodes. It's our first birthday.
Just don't sing happy birthday to me, because then you'll get sued.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have the rights to that, so we can't feature that on the show. The whole crew is once again in the house. I've got Rob Seamus to my right.
Hey, hey.
Got John Ochoa right across.
Hey, what's up?
Got Sam Yu to my left.
How's it going, party people?
And got Monica Howe transmitting live and direct from New York.
Hi, guys.
So it's been kind of a slow news day here around Insomniac HQ. Not a whole lot going on except for the fact that we are moving the dates for EDC Las Vegas.
Yeah, there is a little announcement.
Yeah. We are officially no longer in June. We are moving to May 18th, 19th, and 20th, 2018. Very exciting. Cooler temperatures.
It is cooler. That's the first thing I did was Google the temperature for May.
Anyone who likes spending their Father's Day weekend with family no longer has to worry about that conflict anymore. We are off Father's Day, which makes me very happy.
But still bring your parents to the rave?
But still bring your parents to the rave. Always bring your parents to the rave. We got camping for the first time at EDC Las Vegas. RVs are welcome here. That's going to be a pretty awesome experience for anyone who's thought, I'd like to just stay on this speedway for 4 whole days. Now you can.
Now you can sleep under the electric sky.
Obviously, the presence of camping means less cars on the road going to and from the festival, so traffic should be much less in 2018, and also all that construction that we've had to deal with for the past 2 years is going to be gone during that very critical stretch of road from downtown Las Vegas to the Speedway exit. So, smooth sailing.
I'm excited for that.
Oh my God, yes.
That is going to be the best thing ever.
It's really going to change the game a lot. I think this is the first time we've had a major shift in the planning and the execution of EDC. I mean, just moving the dates alone is going to be huge because the temperatures average at least 10 degrees cooler during the day, and of course during the nighttime, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock a.m. You're not going to have to deal with that 100-degree heat at 3 a.m., which is just, oppressive. For the most up-to-date information on the brand new reimagined EDC Las Vegas 2018, go to insomniac.com or visit us direct at edclasvegas.com.
As soon as we get out of here, I'm going to hop on Facebook and start seeing what the comments are all about.
For our show or for, because our show is really the big news. I mean, we turned 1 year old today.
That's true. Happy birthday.
And to celebrate, we'd like to thank our friends over at Perfectamundo Tequila, Mr. Paul Oakenfold, the one and only, for kicking us down with 3 bottles of their tequila today. We've got a Blanco, which Mr. Yu over here is sampling.
One drink Sam over here.
Yep, I'm definitely one and done.
Rob over there's got the, do you have the Reposado?
He's got a double Reposado.
You got double Reposado. and I have the Añejo. So cheers everyone to our first birthday. Enjoy.
Dude, this is legit.
Are you enjoying that, Rob?
I am enjoying it.
It's good, right?
It's probably one of the smoothest tequilas I've had.
Oh, it's quite pleasant. This is gonna be a great show.
I'm already drunk.
Welcome to Wide Awake Stories.
As always, we have a great show lined up for you today. You're going to hear from Miss Easy, our entertainment director, who's responsible for all things related to our amazing Insomniac performers.
We invited Josh and Aiden of Feenixpawl down to the Insomniac office, and I had a good chat with them about how they became a duo, and it's really interesting. It basically boils down to being in the right place at the right time, and of course, a lot of hard work. And with EDC Orlando coming up, I asked my good friend Humberto to come by the office and share a few stories of his early days raving in Florida, and he's got crazy stories to tell.
You're going to hear from James Maslow, who was formerly in a group called Big Time Rush. You may or may not know them. If you watched a lot of Nickelodeon as a kid, you probably know. He has put out a solo record of his own and has been very moved and changed by electronic music culture.
I linked up with 3 of my personally favorite artists of the moment, Joyryde, Habstrakt, and Ghastly, to talk about the song that kind of gave each of them the bug for dance music and got them hooked.
We've got all that coming up, but first, Mr. Night Bass himself, AC Slater.
Artist relations.
So we're sitting here in downtown LA with Mr. Night Bass himself, AC Slater. So you've got some big news coming up. You have your debut album, Outsiders, dropping at the end of the month on your Night Bass label. Can you walk me through the concept behind the music and the sound?
Musically, I wanted to kind of retain my sound. I didn't want to change it, just do some crazy avant-garde, different album kind of vibe, but I just basically took my sound, that Night Bass sound, and just kind of elevated it a little bit with a lot of like vocal features and just a little bit more musical than just my singles and stuff that I put out. But there's also a lot of that kind of stuff in there as well. So it's like listenable, but still like party music for sure.
When did you start writing the album? Like how long did it take from idea to creation?
Some of the songs are like 2 years old, but I didn't realize until about a year ago where I was like, I really want to do an album. I kind of see it shaping up because I had all these kind of unfinished demos sitting around. When I really started working on it with a goal and kind of like a date in mind, it just came together really easily and really fluidly with like not much effort, and it wasn't like forced, you know what I mean? It was very natural, so I'm really happy about that, the way it came out.
You talk about the Night Bass sound, the AC Slater sound, which is very distinctive. When I walk into a Night Bass night, I know what I'm hearing. I know that Night Bass bass line. How did that whole, sonic aesthetic come about? How was the Night Bass sound born?
Yeah, Night Bass was born because I guess it would be about 4 years ago when I was kind of really thinking about this. It was like the peak of all the big EDM, like Avicii and all that kind of stuff was really huge, and it wasn't really for me, and I was kind of looking for something else to be doing, and I was already sort of dabbling in that sort of Night Bass sound before I even had the name, and it's a lot of like UK influences, like bassline and house and stuff like that, so I just kind of mixed it all together. There wasn't really a place for it, especially in LA, so I just wanted to start a night and see what happened. It turns out like a lot of other people wanted to hear it as well. For me, it was just me filling like the void that I wanted to hear, and it kind of worked out. So
conceptually, Outsiders is also your artistic calling card, so to speak, your big red carpet rollout as AC Slater. What's the theme behind Outsiders? Because I know it's more than just music. It just sounds like there's a message behind the album as well.
Throughout my whole career, I've been sort of an outsider in the music industry, in a sense. Like, I started DJing really young, and I used to play like happy hardcore, and that was always kind of like the lowest like kind of level of genres when, back then in like early 2000s, late 90s, and I've always just kind of been on the like outside of that kind of stuff, on what was popular, and maybe cross over a little bit into that. And for the concept for Outsiders was inspired by just seeing the results of Night Bass and following what I wanted to do and not following what was cool. And once I realized that I needed to do that, it just all came together, and it's a really natural process. Once I think people feel that you have a passion for something, even if you don't outright say it, it comes through, you know what I mean? Outsiders is it captures that spirit of following your own path and being an outsider. I think by being an outsider, you can sort of become not an insider, but part of the bigger scene as well. And that's kind of, for me, the overall concept.
And speaking of outsiders, you also have a laundry list of fellow outsiders on your album. Just about every song has some form of collaborator, whether it's a producer or a vocalist. Why did you decide to go this route with so many collaborators?
Yeah, I mean, for the album, I just wanted to kind of elevate my music into something a little bit more bigger, more listenable, and I brought in a lot of collaborators to kind of help me take it in different directions that I would normally take it. That's why I have like a lot of different producers on there, and I really wanted to have like original vocals. I didn't want to do the route of like going to get, here's the hottest rapper right now, or here's the hottest vocalist right now. I wanted to get people who I know, who are talented, and who I would like to see get attention through this, if this gets attention, you know what I mean? So I don't want to call them outsiders because I don't want to put a label on the people I'm working with, but they have the same kind of of independent vibe that I have, or at least I think they do, you know. That's kind of what I was going for. And honestly, it wasn't totally intentional. I just wanted to work with people on it and bring people that I like into the fold and kind of align myself with as many people as I could.
I definitely noticed a lot of familiar faces on the track list, but also a lot of new faces, people you haven't worked with in the past. Was it important for you to keep it all in the family, so to speak, keep it all in the Night Bass family?
Yeah, I definitely like to keep it in the family with the music stuff. My kind of general philosophy about my career in music is I just want to do cool shit with cool people, and that's literally like the words I live by. Like I said, I don't want to just get the hottest artist and throw them on there and be like, look who it is, you know. It's definitely about bringing everyone with me, because if you got all your friends around you and people that you really like around you and you're doing it together, it's way more fun than just trying to hurdle through by yourself. There's no one to share it with that way. I'd rather bring everyone along on the ride.
When and where was the first ever Night Bass night?
January 31st or something like that, 2014, and I had Christian Martin and a few other people, and it was just like a total experiment. It was at Sound Nightclub. I didn't know what was gonna happen, if anyone was gonna come. Dim Mac was helping me out at the time with it. It ended up packing out and people loved it. Ever since then, it's been really good. It just keeps growing and growing, and I'm really, really grateful for it.
Fast forward 3 years now, Night Bass is going on tour. You're across the United States. You've hosted stages at festivals. It sounds like you're gonna go international. When you launched Night Bass, did you think it was gonna get this far so fast?
So I literally had no idea what was gonna happen. I thought it was gonna like tank and no one was gonna like it. I definitely did not expect it to go this far, this fast. Even like within the first 10 months, we did like a 12-day, 12-show US tour. That just blew my mind. And then we did the 7-Up stage at EDC even before that, and everything happened so quickly. I think it's just because we're passionate about the music and people see that. But yeah, it's cool to be able to take the party all around the country and to Canada. In September, we're taking it to the UK for a couple shows, and then hopefully just keep on moving out from there and spread it.
And from the Night Bass parties, you also created Night Bass Records, in which you serve as founder, A&R, DJ for the party, producer for the event series, probably tour manager. Like, how do you manage wearing all these different hats?
I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to kind of the branding, because I have like a really strong vision for it. I've definitely given up some control to people who understand what it should be, and that makes it a lot easier. But as far as the music with the label, it's like it has to be music that I like and I believe in. It's not just like the hottest artist or whatever. I'll sign someone that's unheard of. It's all about the music, and I think it's really important to be consistent until I have like the right-hand man or woman that like completely gets it. I'm always gonna be hands-on, and even then, you know, I'm always gonna have my hands in it, and it's my baby, and I wanna take care of it.
Earlier this year, I went to my first ever Electric Forest, where Night Bass was hosting the Forest stage for the second year in a row. And I met these two dudes who were wearing Night Bass shirts who came all the way from Ohio for the Night Bass night. And that's when I realized that Night Bass had gone from the local Los Angeles club circuit to become a tastemaker institution on its own. When did you realize that moment?
Well, that's cool, because I know you've been there since like day one, so it's cool that you've seen it kind of the same way I have. And for me, I kind of really noticed it even without leaving LA. After like a year or so, as the party kind of built its own like personality and a little like kind of mini scene formed within it, and kids would come up to me and be like, "Hey, C," because I'm just walking around the club, kids come up to me and be like, "Hey, C, this is my best friend so-and-so, I met him at Night Bass, we love Night Bass," or like, "This is my girlfriend, we met here." And I realized it's like this little community. And then I started going out and playing shows and seeing people wearing the merch and kind of saying the same stuff, and it made me realize like one of my original goals was to like kind of build a little underground scene. I was kind of inspired by like the UK like garage scene, and that kind of happened there, where it was like a separate community from, it was a part of the main dance community but also separate at the same time, like kind of a unique different group, and I wanted to do that. I guess it's working, you know what I mean, because you have those experiences where people are like bonding through the music, and then like that's where they really enjoy, you know, going out and that's their good time, you know. They're kind of a little secret scene that they're in, and it feels really good to see spread. Just like you said at Forest, you see kids like that, and it's pretty mind-blowing to me.
Have you ever seen any night bass tattoos yet?
I've seen at least like 5 or 6. I saw a new one today that's like, it has like glow in the dark. It's cool because it's not the most, it's not really like the hardest tattoo to get because it's like moons, you know what I mean? So it's not like you're writing night bass really big on your arm or you're wherever. It's like, it's cool looking because it crosses over into just like no anything else really. But yeah, people who get it for us and send it to us on like social media, it's pretty amazing to see, man. That's a big step. I really appreciate that.
I feel like that's the ultimate sign that you made it, man. You know, get it. I did want to ask about the UK scene, which you just mentioned, which also has a similar movement. What sort of reaction have you gotten from fans who've crossed over from UK bass into the, you know, quote unquote bass house sound here in America and vice versa? Are people vibing with our version of UK bass here in the States?
Yeah, like when I go to UK and I play shows, especially a lot of the shows I play would be more like the bassline shows, the bass house shows, and all that kind of heavier bassline stuff. So I play a bit slower. They're playing like really fast tempos and it's heavy, and I come in and I do my thing, and it's like, to me, it's like I'm copying the UK, but then all those kids like watch me DJ and they're like, man, that's really cool. Like, it's so different. And it's like weird to hear them say that because I guess it's just like one American's flip on like their sound. To me, I'm like copying them, but to them it's unique and fresh. So it's kind of an interesting perspective to hear them say that, because I'm playing like 128 BPM and they're playing like 135 or whatever, and it's so I'm coming on after this like super fast set and I play and everyone's like still going off and like moshing and shit, and I'm just like, this is crazy, man. Like, it's just interesting to see that to them it's really fresh and unique.
With Outsiders dropping at the end of the month, where does AC Slater go from here?
Outsiders drops on September 29th. I'll be in the UK during that time, finishing up my tour there, come back to the States, do like the North American tour, and then yeah, I'll just be heading out and doing some more international stuff. Yeah, it's crazy, just planning some big things for next year, some festival stuff, just building, just trying to build, and already working on new music because the album's been done, so much more to come. Tons of stuff coming out, a lot of new night bass stuff from a lot of really good artists, new merch, all kinds of stuff, so we'll stay busy.
I always find that interesting when an artist puts out an album, they're already thinking about the next project. You know, usually it's because by the time us fans get to it, it's probably been done for a few months or even a few years at that point. It's so interesting to hear an artist say, I'm already thinking about the next album, the next singles. So do you have anything already in motion or in mind that you're working on?
I kind of live in this like constant state of fear that I'm gonna like fail, so that's why I just work so hard. It's like, it's an album, but it's 2017, and it's like, I don't know how relevant albums are to listeners, especially for dance music. And for me, it's like, I did it for myself just to do it. I've always wanted to do an album and I've never done one. I don't know how it's gonna be received, hopefully really well, but I'm already thinking about, let me keep pushing, because I just always have this kind of fear in the back of my head that it's all gonna collapse. So I just always try to push as hard as I can, and I just want to keep building and growing because I love doing it, and I want to be able to keep doing it for a living as long as I can. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff lined up, like tons of collaborations. I might do like a collaborative EP with just me versus the world or whatever, like a bunch of different artists, some more remixes and stuff like that. Already kind of doing a remix album version of Outsiders with a bunch of other artists. That's kind of starting now too. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff already planned.
Hey, could we get a AC Slater Happy Hardcore album soon?
You have to dig deep on Google to find that, because I never did an album, but there's a lot of Happy Hardcore, and it's the same name. There's one I did that someone reminded me of recently. It's like a compilation. It's a mix CD from, it's not that long ago, 10 years maybe. It's called Planes, Trains, and Alcohol Bills. So go look for that. That's already out there. And there's actually a few people that are in the scene now with different names on there, but I always kept the same name, so you could find my incriminating happy hardcore music online, but I'll probably not go back to that anytime soon.
So we've seen how fast night bass grew in a matter of just 3 short years. Where do you see night bass in the next 5 to 10 years?
I want to see night bass be completely global. I want to have like our own little festival, something different, like just like a small boutique little kind of festival or fair type thing. I want to see the roster grow. I want to see everyone that's on night bass become like big names. You know, I'm not looking for like a mainstream success, but I want it to be, I want the longevity. I want to continue to build our little kind of family around the world and just keep the community going and just always have that support, and we'll just keep giving them good music and good parties.
No doubt. What's up? This is DJ Hansel, and you're listening to Wide Awake Stories. This is about to be the deepest thing you'll ever hear in your entire life. USSR deep. Enjoy.
Wide Awake Stories from Insomniac.
I remember attending the first night bass party ever here in Hollywood, and to see the brand grow so big nationally and internationally and become a record label so fast has been such a fascinating thing to watch.
I've got nothing but respect for AC and what he's doing with his night bass imprint. I think the most impressive part is how he's taken a sound that originated in the UK and kind of brought it to the masses in America, and the people that were holding it down from the beginning are really respecting what he's doing on that front, who he's bringing, and just educating people on a level that no one really expected once this small scene first started in Birmingham.
Yeah, AC Slater and night bass became quite the tastemakers here in the States.
Yeah, and it's only getting bigger, so big ups to him.
Make sure to check out his albums at the end of the month on night bass.
In a couple months' time, we'll be traveling out to Orlando for EDC Orlando, and in celebration of that show, Rob, you linked up with a really good buddy of yours and got some really great stories as well.
Humberto is an old school friend of mine, and he's an old school raver from Florida. He's written a bunch about the Florida rave scene over the years, so much so that he's compiled a book on it. And like I said, with EDC Orlando coming up, now's the perfect time to have him over and share some of those crazy stories with you guys.
Headliner highlights.
EDC Orlando is happening in Orlando, Florida. Now, most people think of major influential cities when it comes to EDM around the world, like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, LA, places in Europe. But Orlando was very instrumental. Florida at large was very instrumental. Now, I grew up about 3.5 hours south in Miami, which together with Orlando makes this swampy, steamy place that is just built for dance music. Back in the day, I grew up in South Florida, Miami to be exact. By the time I got into my teens, you could say I was a raver, a Florida raver. And this was the mid to late 90s when the scene was still mostly underground. Hell, they were still called raves. Now, the Florida scene set itself apart from the rest of the country's raver hot pockets like California, New York, Chicago, and Detroit when it was chronicled by Rolling Stone writer Simon Reynolds as, quote, infamous for taking excess hedonism to the point of near-death experiences, unquote. And I can attest to the truth in that. Our scene was dark and mean, and so was the way we partied. And for the record, I'm not advocating for what I did or what I saw or what I'm about to tell you, but it's worth noting how it all went down. I don't want to sugarcoat it, so listener discretion be advised. What I'm about to describe was not always pretty, but sometimes it was beautiful, especially in the beginning. So I started going to raves at a shockingly early age, like around 15. That's pretty freaking young. If I see a 15-year-old kid out in a club in the middle of the night at a rave today, I'd be like, where the hell are your parents, kid? But when you grew up in Florida back in the day, you figure out how to get around things like parents and curfews and being underage. Now, this was around 1995 when raves went on till way past dawn, which made it easier for teens like myself because we could actually wake up early in the morning and go out to a rave. If I wasn't pretending to be sleeping over a friend's crib, I'd tell my folks I was leaving real early to go surfing, even though I had no surfboard and never came back with a tan. If my friends were picking me up, I had to roll out of bed around 4 a.m. and stand on the corner and wait for them. Remember, this is before cell phones, and I had no beeper, or pager, as some people call them. So when they said they were going to be there, they better be there, and they always were. Now, my folks would have never imagined I was venturing off to such strange places. It would have seemed alien to them. Hell, it was alien to me. The raves would from that point on make me believe in actual aliens. And there was even a time when I convinced a couple of my friends I was from another planet, but that's another story involving acid. First, I want to explain how it all began for me and a lot of people I knew back in Florida. It happened at a place that for all intents and purposes created the Florida rave scene. It was a club called The Edge. Now, it wasn't one club, there were actually two The Edges. The original was in Orlando, where EDC is being held. That one catered to Central Florida and actually was the original. And it brought down people like the Chemical Brothers and, you know, BT, some of the big trance names of the day. And it also started a lot of the Central Florida break sounds, you know, people like Rabbit in the Moon from Tampa. I went to the South Florida edition or installment of The Edge. It was in Fort Lauderdale, which is right in between Miami and Palm Beach. So it was the epicenter of the South Florida rave scene. This is where the first biggest names of the time played. I saw Plastic Man, aka Richie Hodden. I saw The Prodigy. I saw Hardkiss, Orbital, Union Jack, Goldie, Future Sound of London, Josh Wink, The Crystal Method, and Uber Zone. They all came to play alongside Florida's own Rabbit in the Moon and Strike, Bruce Wilcox. Music you could hear nowhere else but a rave. Now, The Edge was located beside dark train tracks in an industrial section of downtown Fort Lauderdale, and at the time it was dark and decrepit. It was a standalone building with paint peeling off the walls. At night, it looked more like a post-apocalyptic crack house than a nightclub. It was known as a goth industrial metal club on most nights, and I had seen Marilyn Manson perform a concert there a few weeks before I went to my first rave, actually. But they dedicated Saturday nights to a late night rave party that started at 2 a.m. And some weekends it would even go on till noon the next day. It's one of the first places you could go to hear all kinds of electronic music, from psytrance to minimal techno, and towards the morning they'd play electro funk and breaks, and basically they'd bring out the old Miami bass records because they'd run out of actual trance and techno to play. And because liquor isn't served after 2 a.m., the age requirement was only 16 and over. So that first night, my first night at The Edge, I'm a high school freshman and I'm staying over at a friend's house. It's in the middle of the night. I'm stoned on the floor playing Street Fighter 2, and he gets on the phone and he tells me we're going to a rave. Now, at the time, I knew nothing of raves. I'm listening to rock like Jane's Addiction and gangster rap about smoking chronic and drive-bys. And how the hell are we supposed to get into a nightclub in the middle of the night? We're little kids. My friend figures since it's 16 and over, we shouldn't have a problem. When we roll into the parking lot at The Edge, I'm in a world I've never seen before. It's a blend of club kids and b-boys and goths, most of whom are wearing the baggiest jeans I'd ever seen in my life. I realized they were Jenkos. I would soon learn them and buy them and wear them myself. Now, when I get inside, the first thing that runs through my mind is, holy shit. If my parents knew where I was right now, I'd be grounded for a really long time. The whole place was sensory overload. It was creepy and otherworldly. It was dark and mysterious. There was a subset. There was a pit that doubled for a dance floor. The side rooms were lit by black light. The couches were stuffed with people, intertwined like pretzels, making out, massaging each other. One guy was on a stool with his jeans around his ankles, and a pink-haired chick was riding him. They were having sex in public, but nobody was paying attention to it. The sounds of whistles were resonating through the place. They would weave in cadence, like the people, the fans on the dance floor blowing the whistles were part of the songs. And I'll never forget the first song that I heard when I went into my first rave at The Edge. It was Union Jack's Lollipop Man. And look this up, guys. This was a classic. I've just got to do it with my mouth. I'm really bad at that, and my friends used to hate on the ride home when I would be like, "Hey, did you guys hear that song? The one that went and we'd all be trying to like mouth techno songs, and it would become really ridiculous." But the only rational thoughts that were going through my head was, yeah, I could get in trouble, but I didn't have a worry in the world. And some of the chicks would come by in those baggy jeans and they'd wear the straps of their G-strings high on their hips, like visible above their waist, which looked trashy and sexy as hell. One guy was in an Uncle Sam suit. Some girls wore their hair like Princess Leia. I should say some guys too, so Freudian slip was correct. Other girls were dressed as Rainbow Bright. A couple of guys were in homemade alien costumes, walking through the club like they were lost in outer space. Some of the people were on the floor massaging each other with their eyes rolling back into their heads. Some sucked on pacifiers. They looked like giant babies. Others were blowing Vicks Vapor Rub into their eyes. What the hell were these people on, I was thinking. I had no idea what ecstasy is. I wouldn't take ecstasy for another year after I came to my first rave. Yes, I waited till I was all of 16. Hi, Mom. But on my first night, I was just gonna blaze. My friend and I had a pair of fat joints rolled up, and that would be enough for us. Except when we find a corner to light them up, the bouncer comes over and takes them away. He doesn't throw us out. He just walks away and smokes our joints himself. I guess we really stuck out as little kids even there. Anyway, basically my first night at a rave, I was sober as hell. But you know what? To this day, it was the trippiest thing I'd ever experienced. There's a lot of things that go into what makes the Florida rave scene. basically the Florida rave scene is Miami and Orlando, but we teamed together to make it the whole states thing, because when I came up going to raves, you always had to drive. I mean, I grew up in Miami, and you know, when they started throwing Fevers in South Beach, which was like half an hour away from my house, I was like, awesome. But for the most part, I had to drive to Fort Lauderdale, which is about an hour north, or West Palm Beach, or Orlando, which was 3.5 hours. You drive to Gainesville, and all these little towns around Miami, Orlando also had a lot of clubs. So in South Florida, you had the Edge, and you also had the original Edge in Orlando. You also had Firestone, which was at an old abandoned firehouse. That was in Orlando. That was very seminal, and that's where, you know, a lot of people came through, like Baby Ann and Icy. And they developed that funky break sound. Now, the Orlando sound was more the funky break sound, which you would hear a lot more snare. Boom, boom, boom. Miami was more Miami bass infused, so they wanted more electro pops. You know, they wanted like boom, 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 boom. So in general, Florida definitely loved the breakbeat. When I first started going to raves at the Edge, you did hear a lot of psytrance. This is 1994, 1995, so the rave scene was very much that. Union Jack and stuff like that, if anyone can remember or wants to look it up. Then, you know, the Florida rave scene got a reputation for being a little, for lack of a better word, ghetto. Because it was very breakbeaty, you had a very street sensibility to the music, so while it was very alien and very alternative, it was also a lot of, you know, it was kind of like hip-hoppy, it was breakdancey, there was a lot of b-boys involved, there was a lot of battling, it had a lot of attitude, especially at Fever. Now, when you went up north, Gainesville, which is a college town, was also very famous for a couple of very seminal clubs. One of them was Simon's. Simon's used to attract a lot of the Orlando talent over, and they really made ravers out of most University of Florida students. In Florida, you also had a place called the Theater as well. When I was about 18 and I was a college freshman, I would drive to see my friends in Tallahassee, which had their own club. I can't remember it at the time, but that was a smaller scene up there. And we would drive to Gainesville first, hang out with friends, and go to raves. Now, this was the beginning of internet radio. This is 1998, 1999. And in Miami, there was a very seminal pirate radio station called The Womb, W-O-M-B. It was run by Duncan Ross, who was, you know, like the main music curator for Fashion TV. It's Miami, so it was very Euro. And a lot of people, they were jungle heads too and all that stuff. And they would have shows that they would broadcast from like this apartment in South Beach. I remember I would hang out with my friend, DJ Nova, Nelson Fernandez, and Strike, who was an amazing artist himself, George Acosta, who's a Miami DJ, the guys from Soul Oddity, now called Phoenicia, Joshua K, they would all hang out there. And I remember one night Juan Atkins comes in like at 1 o'clock in the morning to spin, and he comes in, he looks completely out of place. He's, you know, this at the time, you know, he's already an older, mature African-American gentleman from Detroit, you know, and he's there with his wife. They have these long, cool leather coats on. The first thing he asks is, who has the grass? And he used the word grass, which I found was kind of funny. And I remember these, he's not a raver. Juan Atkins, Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, the guys that originated techno in Detroit in the early 80s, they did not create rave. They created the music that would fuel the rave scene in the late 80s, early 90s. To them, when rave scenes came about, they were like, who are these trippy white kids, basically, because the early techno days were, you know, Cybotron, and Kevin Saunderson as Inner City. Goldie's song Inner City Life is a tribute to that, and it was the origins of house music. And you had Chicago, you had Frankie Knuckles and the Chicago house scene. It's a whole different scene, you know, than what the rave scene was in the early to mid 90s, which was very trippy and alien. And Florida kind of got a lot of that. So, you know, in Florida, we had our breaks, we had our bass, and then when we started getting people from outside coming in the mid-90s with the birth of Winter Music Conference and just the fact that our clubs were taking off, and we'd be throwing these huge festivals and we'd be bringing in talent from outside, then we started getting exposed to other things. And I think that a lot of the sounds that you equate with Miami now, like the Euro House, is not really Miami. That's the European influence because they invade Miami during Winter Music Conference and they've kind of left their imprint. But that wasn't Miami sound back in the 90s. Back in the 90s, it was more psytrance mixed with ghetto breakbeats and bass. And the Miami flavor was very, I mean, what we wore was a lot of baggy. You know, we had the big Jankos. The baggier, the better. I remember I had a pair of Jankos. I was a size 32. I'd buy a size 36. The legs were size 36. I mean, each leg was big enough that I could fit into it. You know, the old school, big, long, reflective windbreakers. I thought everything was so futuristic. And, you know, we started getting influenced also when jungle started coming in by like the Ronnie Size stuff coming out of London. And, you know, we were really influenced by that. Future Sound of London. I don't know if it's Autek or Audiker. I don't know how to pronounce it, but those guys. Yeah, so, but the Florida was just mean. It was a little darker. It was a little brasher, you know. It had a little less hippie plur to it, you know, towards the end, which was not the best thing. I wish we had more of that, but it was definitely like an urban take on the rave scene. Even though a lot of the raves that we went to were out in the sticks, out in the middle of the swamp, there was still kind of like a hip hop element to it, I guess. Even the white kids from Central Florida, and not to bring like race in, but I'm just describing, they also had a certain street flair to them. I guess the Florida race scene was very down and dirty. It was very excessive. The music was very hard, and so were a lot of the things that people did. It was messy, but it was beautiful that way. It was super fun and very unpredictable. And wow, me and my friends, I mean, our lives have never forgotten those moments, and every once in a while we still experience them. And if you go to EDC Orlando, I definitely think you'll see a cool reflection of how the Florida scene has grown and matured. Some of the silly stuff, is a little less existent today, and really the music has become a fusion of everything, not only our influences and our DJs, but the world's DJs who come to Florida, come to Miami, come to Orlando.
Broadcasting from the Insomniac HQ.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
Yo, here's a drop. Oh wait, no, not like that. What's up? This is Getter. You're listening to freaking Wide Awake Stories, dude. Don't go to bed.
That guy tells some great stories, man, not only as a writer, but as a storyteller. I mean, you can hear it in his voice, how passionate he is about the scene and recalling all those memories so vividly. I mean, I still can't believe that he would pull one over on his parents and say he was going surfing with no surfboard. I mean, how not to like disrespect the dude's parents or anything, but come on now.
Dude needs his own talk show, by the way.
Yeah, he should have his own talk show. For sure.
I think he does have his own, or he's the producer of a talk show actually here in LA. And you could catch him once in a while at the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store up on Sunset.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Give us a call on the Wide Awake hotline, aka the Rave hotline, at 310-818-9406. You can find past episodes of Wide Awake Stories on the Insomniac Events SoundCloud, Mixcloud, YouTube, and of course by searching for us on iTunes.
You're tuned in to Wide Awake Stories.
Feenixpawl.
What a name.
Well, let's talk about how they spell their name first, just so everyone can Google them and they know. It's Feenixpawl.
Yes.
SEO. That's great SEO.
I know, great SEO. I think the first thing they're going to tell you is how they came up with their name, because I'm sure that's what you're all thinking.
Which has a cool story behind it,
Very
too.
cool story behind it. And really, just like you said, Bob, at the beginning of the show, being in the right place at the right time really pays dividends.
No, they were definitely in the right place at the right time, and that it paid off for them, but they busted their ass to get where they are today, for sure.
Artist Relations.
I'm sitting here with Aiden and Josh of Feenixpawl. Thank you guys for coming down to the Insomniac office and sharing your story with us. What I'd like to chat with you guys today about are your childhoods. Aiden, let's start with you. For what I understand, your father was a priest. He renounced the cloth and left home when you were about 13 years old.
Yeah, my father was a priest. I think he started when I was about 4, maybe 3 or 4. So basically my entire sort of young life. Yeah, he would move around a lot. I mean, I think I went to 5 different primary schools before I even went to high school. So, I was always pretty good at making friends. I mean, a lot of people will probably hear me say that and think that's crazy because I'm a bit of an introvert. And then around when I was about 13, he did what I think everyone that we knew never thought was possible, which was had a bit of a midlife crisis, had an affair, and just left my mum and both my brothers with nothing, and completely left, the church, said he didn't believe in it anymore, had a complete reversal about absolutely everything. And I haven't actually spoken to him since, and it threw my family into like a complete disarray. We didn't have anywhere to live, because what a lot of people don't understand is when there's a priest, you live in the church's house, technically for free, but you don't really get paid any money, but you don't pay rent or anything like that. So my mum didn't have a job because she never really needed to. She was raising us. So once he left, we got kicked out of the house. We had nowhere to go. So we ended up moving in with my grandma. So it was a tough time, and it was a weird age where you're kind of just becoming slowly an adult and things can go really wrong. And I think part of me retreated into myself, and I got so deep into music because it was almost like an escape. It was one of those situations where it was the worst thing that could have happened to my family, but also one of the best things, because, I know that I never would be doing this if it wasn't for that. So, you take what you get and you make the most of it. And I think that's what I've done.
At what point did you meet Josh?
I'd started DJing slightly and also producing. I wasn't good at either of them. And Josh actually ran a nightclub in Melbourne that I started going to. I think I might have been a little bit underage, to be honest. So I started going there when I was about, I think I started going there when I was about 17 or 18, and sat Josh down at one point, and I barely knew him, and I actually didn't think he liked me at all. And I told him that at the time. But yeah, I just begged him. I said, look, I was promoting for him at the time, and I'm a terrible promoter. Like, I'm not good at bringing people here, but I can DJ, just give me a shot. And he's kind of like, yeah, okay, fine. And put me into the back room, and I thought I was pretty good. He maintains that I wasn't, but I reckon I was great. And I think what had happened was he'd seen me DJ and seen me having fun, and then we got to this point where I was already playing at another nightclub after a little bit of time that he was also playing at. So we were playing alternating weeks. We just sort of said to each other, why don't we just team up and play together so we can play every week? And I think it was the first show that we did together. About 50 of our friends ended up coming, and we played like 9 till 10, which is obviously extremely early. But it was packed, and everyone was coming up to us going, man, that was awesome. That was so much fun. You guys are really good. And we were kind of like, well, maybe we could do this. Maybe this is a thing. And then just went on from there.
What year was this?
This was in 2004, I think.
Okay.
So I was 18, I think you were 19. One of my friends at the time was basically making trance, and I kind of...
That's when you became a fat pants wearing raver.
There was a time where I used to wear fat pants and go to raves in weird castles outside of like Melbourne and did all that. And, you know, there's no doubt that like that influenced me as well, because, you know, so much of trance is progressive melodies and nice vocals, and that's basically what we do now. That's what we're about. So
Josh, for what I understand, you have a pretty interesting story as well. Your dad grew up in Burma. He grew up a wealthy man, and he was exiled from Burma and had to move to Australia. And
yeah, so his family was one of the top maybe 2 or 3 richest families in Burma, and you're right, he was exiled, and he's of Chinese blood, and a lot of the local Burmese people wanted to get rid of all the Chinese-blooded citizens, and that's what they did. They basically had to flee the country. They went from mansions to living in one apartment. He had one brother and 2 sisters and his mum and dad, and they slept in an apartment together, one room. The drive for him was always to make it back again, I suppose. And I'll be honest, like, he did. He was successful, and I had a pretty good upbringing, privileged, I would say. I went to a nice school, but I was the opposite to Aiden. Aiden was a jock. He was friends with everybody. You know, I was a geek. I got bullied. I feel like a lot of music producers and DJs are like that, though. We're all kind of nerds at heart. And even though Aiden's a jock, he's still a nerd at heart. At the time, my family was, my dad owned, like, he was a partner in a nightclub. So he's a dentist and a nightclub partner. It was very strange. But he said, why don't you go and I was studying business. It's like the next best thing I could get into at university. And I hated it. I really did hate it. I was working at a busboy at the nightclub just to make ends meet, I suppose, just to have a bit of pocket money, and because I wanted to move out, and I got into partying. I love watching DJs and going to clubs, and then all of a sudden I was promoting nightclubs. And I thought, you know what? This DJing looks fun. And to be honest, the reason why I started DJing was to save money. I didn't want to pay DJs when I was running nightclubs. So I'm like, I'll do it. And I fell in love with it. And that's when I met Aiden at the nightclub, or one of the clubs I was running. But yeah, so we met at the club, and like Aiden said, he wanted to DJ anywhere, so I put him on in the back room. And I do make jokes that he was terrible. He wasn't terrible. He was actually better than I was, I'll be honest. But yeah, then we became mates and decided to stick it out and become a duo, I guess. I don't know. We just decided we enjoyed doing it together, I suppose. That sounded wrong.
So you've just finished this DJ night. You guys both play together. You have great reaction from the crowd. People are talking about, you know, you should do this more. At what point does Feenixpawl actually become a thing?
My dad's name, this is, I guess, stems back to our fathers. Both of our fathers' names is Paul. So, and his middle name, so that's my middle name is Paul. His middle name, Aiden's middle name is Phoenix. And we just changed the spelling because we wanted a name that meant something to us.
Right.
It is a very strange name. We know it is, and I don't regret it. But it is what it is. And yeah, so that's the name itself has a lot of meaning to us, but not to many other people. From there, we started getting booked. The biggest club in Melbourne at the time was called One Love, and all we wanted to do was play there. And we got the opportunity to open every week. It went from opening in Melbourne, and then they'd start touring us around the country. Like, oh, okay, there might be more than just a hobby in this.
And then at what point, your father passed, right?
He did, yeah. So that was a huge turning point in both of our lives, really. I mean, at the time, we had signed a record deal. I'm not going to mention the label, but we signed a record deal that was really, really bad. But we thought that was the point where, like, you know, we can make a career out of this. And it just fell flat. We literally spent 3 years in the deal. They released, I think, 2 tracks. It was really awful. They wouldn't even respond to our emails, but because we were locked into it, we couldn't sign tracks to other labels. Like, it was really, really horrible. And we're like, all right, maybe this isn't a career for us. Maybe it's not going to happen. Having said that, I don't think of ourselves as people that give up. You know, we still wanted to do it. We were disheartened. We were very jaded at that point in time. And then out of nowhere, I was literally on vacation, and my mum calls me up and she's like, your dad's sick. You have to come home. I'm like, sick how? Like, I saw him last week. He was fine. And she goes, no, he's sick. Like, he just probably got a week or 2 before he passes. So I jumped on the next flight home. Yeah, he was gone pretty soon after. He was gone about 10 days, 2 weeks later. And there was a huge turning point in my life, obviously, because, like I said, he was quite successful. He had a lot of businesses, and I got thrown in the deep end with that. I never finished university. I turned into a nightclub promoter and DJ. So, you know, I had to learn how to swim really fast. I sort of got it to the businesses to the point where I felt like they could be managed, and I was comfortable. And I just said to Aiden one day, I'm like, man, I just got to get out of here. Like,
were you still trying to DJ while you were managing these businesses, or did you take a little break?
We kind of took a break, and yeah, was nowhere near what we were doing before. Yeah, it was definitely on hiatus. I just didn't have time for that. And then at that point, my dad had a lot of frequent flyer points randomly, and I just said, let's get the hell out of here. I booked a flight for me and Aiden, and a couple of other friends joined us, and we went around Europe for a little bit, and then we ended up in Greece, and we went to Mykonos, and that's when we met the owners of this nightclub called Paradise Club. One night it was one day, we're at the beach in Greece, and we got a phone call from one of the owners, and he said, look, Sebastian Ingrosso is sick. He's not going to come tonight.
Well, how did you meet the owner? Like,
we were just out partying, and I think we had a mutual friend.
Yeah, we had a mutual friend that was there, and he'd invited us out for dinner. And there was about 20 people there, and we just happened to be seated next to him. And, you know, look, to be completely honest, back then we were partying pretty hard, and I think he was almost impressed by how drunk we were at the time. They were just like, I like these guys, they're chilled out, they're entertaining, and we were lucky enough for them to like take a little bit of a liking to us that night, which obviously helped.
And that's when, yeah, the owner of the club called us out of the blue, and he said, do you guys want to play? And of course we wanted to play. It's one of our favorite clubs in the world, but we didn't have anything with us. We didn't have headphones. We didn't have USBs. We had music on our laptops that we had with us. So it was just a scramble. I think we went down to like the local store and bought some USBs. We spent the whole afternoon just downloading and putting music onto USBs. We'd never used USBs before. So we're like, shit, is this going to work? Like, if we plug them in, we didn't know how to format them. So we were kind of nervous, and the main set, it was like 2 in the morning. It was packed house. And the other thing was they didn't announce that Sebastian wasn't coming. They still had a big banner, Sebastian Ingrosso. And then it's just, yeah, these 2 blokes from Australia jump on and try and start DJing with USBs. But it worked fine, and it went off. The crowd was nuts. And
was this the biggest crowd that you've ever played for, or what?
At that point in time, yeah, for sure, definitely. And there was not one complaint that Ingrosso wasn't there. Thank God, no one threw anything at us. So we got through that set, and then after that set, we met Ivan Goff. Ivan Goff is one half of TV Rock, who did a lot of work with Axwell on Axtone. You know, he's from Melbourne, where we're from as well. And he goes, look, when we get back to Australia, why don't we do a track together? And we'd always looked up to Ivan. We were like, of course, let's do a track together. We picked a day, I think, to work in the studio, but we had a girl. Aiden heard this TV commercial, and this girl was singing, and he literally Shazammed it.
Yeah, I tweeted at her, and I was like, hey, I just heard this song on TV. Would you want to get in the studio with us and do a track? And she was like, yeah, but I live in Perth. So we ended up putting her on a flight and getting her over. And so we had her in the studio, and we were like, when we go to Ivan's house, he's got his own studio, and we'll record something there and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, we got into the studio, and Aiden literally opened his laptop and played 4 chords, this chord progression. And Ivan's there too, and she's sort of bobbing her head and she's writing stuff on her phone. And she gets up, she goes, I'm ready. I'm like, all right. So we turn the mic on and she starts going, in my mind. And it's, you know, she just recorded this snippet of vocal straight away. And we're like, oh my God, we looked at each other going, this is really cool. It ended up changing our lives completely. Like, we won an ARIA award, which is like an Australian equivalent of a Grammy. We got nominated for a Grammy. We got booked for shows all around the world. It was just a turning point in our lives. The story about my father, I've told a lot of people that are close to me, but I've never really said it publicly before. And I think it's one of those things where I think as much as I would give every bit of success that we've had to have him back, I feel like it was almost a gift that he gave us, and we just got to take that ball and run with it, and hopefully make him proud. Fingers crossed. I'm sure he is, even though I'm not a dentist.
What's up, guys? It's Donovan, and you're listening to Wide Awake Stories. My mom used to tell me Wide Awake Stories. It's gonna be so much fun. I gotta go to the bathroom, though.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
I think the biggest thing I took from that interview, well, one of the biggest things, is I have to vacation in Greece. That sounds
absolutely.
like a lot. I mean, I see pictures on the Instagram, and
it's supposed to be the new Ibiza.
Ooh, the
Did
new
I say that right?
Ibiza.
Ibiza.
They also provide loads of entertainment on the Facebook and the Gram. One of them does some really good impressions. I mean, they're a cut up.
Who do we have next, Rich?
We had James Maslow come in the studio. Now, you might not know James's name, but some of you may know Big Time Rush, which is a big band on Nickelodeon back in the day. That's how he got his start. And like a lot of different bands who start on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel, kind of grew up, developed his own sound, found his own voice, and he did a lot of that through the lens of electronic music. Went to Ibiza, or Ibiza, as they say. Fell in love with DJs like Solomon, had his Ibiza experience, as you do, had his EDC Vegas experience, as you do, and he came through the studio and chatted with us about it.
Headliner highlights.
How did dance music and dance music culture enter your life? I mean, everyone's got an origin story, if you will, about a friend that introduced him to this album or took them to this festival. What's yours?
Oh, that's a good question. My brother, who he programs, he's in an entirely different world these days. When we were younger, he DJ'd. You know, he kind of got out of that scene, and then I realized, wow, I'm really, really into dance music. I dig it. It's fun. I like people remixing songs. It was always inspiring to me because it was a different take on somebody's original art, and then it became and transcended to an entire new form of art. And since then, man, I've been pretty hooked, you know, from going to EDC to Coachella to I'm actually working with some dope DJs called Tom and Collins from Mexico City. I don't know if you know who they are, but I think they played EDC this past year, the year before. We're jumping in the studio in a couple weeks. Shit, I think in about a week. So, I mean, I'm psyched, man. This is actually my music, though it's not all this way, it definitely has influences of electronic music, and I think I'm going to take that even further as we move forward.
I think most people would know your musical career from where you started at Big Time Rush. Sure. And I think when everyone starts and they kind of go through this maturation process where their songwriting changes, the people they collaborate with change, how do you feel that your sound and your songwriting has really morphed over the last 5 years or so?
To discover the sonic palette that I then based this album on, and I guess the beginning, the initiation of my sound as a solo artist, it took years. I've always been writing. I've been writing music since I was little. And then for BTR, I wrote a lot of the music. A lot of the guys wrote the music, but that was very specific. So when I was in the studio or at home or on the piano and I was starting to write a song for Big Time Rush, I always kind of had in the back of my mind that, okay, we've got 4 different voices. Who sings best in what way? How can I write something that makes sense for 4 people live? You know, there were a lot of boundaries, to be frank, which isn't a bad thing. We created some great stuff. But then afterwards, I jumped right back into the studio and was like, all right, now's the time. I'm going to finish more songs, keep writing for me, thinking that it'd be just that easy. I'm like, oh, I got 50 songs I haven't used. Maybe I'll cut one of these. And I'd cut that song and go, man, it doesn't feel right. And then jump in with a producer, and if the producer, even big producers we worked with, the problem was the music would either sound like Big Time Rush or it'd sound like that producer. And I didn't quite get it because I'm like, man, I've been singing my whole life. Like, I know I'm good at this, but this doesn't feel good, doesn't feel authentic. And it took years of frustratingly working with different producers, different songwriters, writing different songs to realize I had to just do it on my own. I actually learned to produce to do this album. I mean, I've always known vocal production and music theory and all of that, but to actually go in and learn Pro Tools and Logic and engineering, that's the only way I eventually got to this sound, which feels very unique to me, very authentic to me. And it's really just the beginning. I'm getting better and better as I move forward, but it just took discovery. It was a long fucking process, you know? And then, not to have a drawn, long answer, but, you know, what do you write about when you've been doing the same thing for 6 years? I mean, there were different things, you know, but we'd be either on set filming the show or be on an airplane or a tour bus or in an arena. So as cool as that is, even that becomes monotonous when you do it hundreds of times. Where do you draw from? What inspiration do you have? And that's what I eventually learned. Like, holy shit, I had to go through this frustration. I had to go and travel the world. I had to go to Ibiza and be inspired by artists that I'd never even heard of before and go, oh shit, there's more stuff to life, more stuff to the world, have relationships, I mean, all of that. Then I was able to come back and go, okay, now I can do something authentic.
All right, so you brought it up. I have to ask, how was your Ibiza experience?
Ibiza was one of the most ridiculous trips I've ever taken. I was there, 2 summers ago with 16 or 18 of my homies. We were, so I guess it was about 9 or 10 guys and 9 or 10 girls, a few which kind of rotated through friends that were in Europe. And, you know, to Europe, it's like Cabo because it's so close. You know what I mean? They just hop over in a 2-hour flight at most. But we got this just villa, this massive villa up in the hills right there near downtown, huge pool. And every day, we literally from day one, you wake up, you know, whatever, noon, 1, 2, and that got progressively later. You know, we start going, our boys were DJs at the house, and so they'd start spinning. My buddy Tully and Julian would just basically be there, and they start playing some music, whatever it is, you know, like Guy Gerber, and just like keep it chill in the mornings. Then we go and we get a table somewhere to have, you know, lunch at like 3. Yeah, and we'd be on some beach. More rosé, more tequila, you know, whatever, just dancing. And there'd usually be a dope DJ there, like Guy Gerber had discovered in Ibiza. And it just would keep going. You know, now you're 3 sheets to the wind, and it's like 8, 9 o'clock, you know, the sun is set, and you gotta, you know, go back and get changed, and you go out to dinner at like midnight. You know what I mean? Like, maybe we'd eat at the house, maybe we go out somewhere, drink some more, eat some more music. And then at around, you know, I don't know, 3 or so in the morning, you go out to a club, because that's when they start to get going in Ibiza. In a lot of parts of the world, to be honest. And then we'd go and see like Solomon. You know, we'd get there at 3, he'd come on at 4:30, 5 in the morning, and then the party starts going, you know what I mean? And you party until 7, 8, 9 in the morning, because that's just the culture.
Electronic music has been all over the place over the last few years. And you just named some incredible producers and DJs, you know, during your trip to Ibiza. How much of that production sound or sentiment, that sort of electronic palette, do you think you incorporated or were influenced by for this record that you got out now?
I mean, dude, thank God I had those experiences and got to experience this music, because you're right, a lot of it isn't mainstream. You're not going to hear it on the radio, and it's some of my favorite music. You know, I mean, dude, you look at my Spotify, and it's going to be from like Madeon to Porter Robinson to... It inspired my album in a huge way. Now, this album is the first thing I've put out, and I was pretty cognizant about the fact that, like any artist, like any person, we've got a lot of different sides to us. We have different emotions. We act differently on different days. And as a musician, like, that means I want to make different types of fucking music. So it's not only electronic music. There's some acoustic, there's some whatever. But my point is, songs like the first song I'm about to do my first music video for, which nobody haven't really announced until right now, but this in less than a month I'll be filming. We're doing pre-pro, and I'm so psyched about it. For the first like big music video is Addicted, and Addicted is the most electronic song on my album by far, and it was directly inspired by, well, I guess indirectly inspired by a lot of these different artists, in the way where I went, hey, okay, let's say I am a pop artist. I am. But why do I have to do cheesy shit. If that's nobody said that pop has to be cheesy. I don't think pop would be as popular as it is. Was Michael Jackson cheesy? No.
Beatles weren't cheesy either, and they were pop.
There you go. And so it's given me the freedom, just realizing that, to do stuff that is far more R&B, far more soulful, and then stuff that's far more electronic and different. And so that track in particular, we created an entire arc. You know, one of my favorite things, why I love Solomon, why so many people do, is that when you're listening and you go to, you know, I've seen him 3 different times now. I've seen him in Ibiza a couple times. I've seen him in downtown LA. When you go and you at one of his shows, you're moved by the music, but it's a story. Even when he's not playing songs with lyrics in them, and that's what's so amazing about music and amazing about electronic music. It takes you at this place, and then you're dancing, and then he takes it, he tones it down, and he's telling you it's not just one aspect. It's not just 4 on the floor the whole time. And that's what we did with this song, where it starts with literally nothing but a single synth and then some snaps. And then we go, and then it progresses in the a little more traditional. Then we go and do a hook. Then I do a drop. You know, I mean, pop music doesn't have to just be a hook back to a verse. And then we do a different hook and a different drop. And some of it's just electronic music. And, oh man, I love that song. I fucking love it. And it was, you know, if I felt like I had to be in a box of just pop music or do something traditional, that would have never come out.
Let's talk about your EDC experience. 2015,
yeah,
EDC Vegas, your first Insomniac show probably, right? What was that experience like, coming in, seeing the lights, the layout, the stages for the first time, and then really interacting with the people?
Biggest memory I have from that is just the scale of the production. I mean, main stage. And I'll get into why I was here in a second if we have time. But I was in that, like, I think it was Marquee that does the VIP table stadium fucking absurd thing where it's like couches and sushi and whatever, but they put it right in the middle of the festival. So you look right at main stage. You feel like you're in a room and you are outside. That's how fucking massive this was. And this was the one with the owls on either side. And it's just so freaking cool to watch how much fun everybody is having. And anywhere you go, and this is one of the coolest things about this festival in particular versus, you know, I like festivals, been to a bunch, you bump into somebody and like they apologize. You know, nobody is there like some, you know, I've been to Warped Tour and I used to do that when I was a little kid, and like, you know, mosh pits are a big thing and like pushing and fighting and shoving, like that's kind of the culture, and like I dig it. But nobody is like that at EDC. Everyone is like, yo, just dance, have a good time. Do you need some of my water? Do you like... And so do you have this just massive inviting environment, from the lights to the music to the people, and you got a bunch of different stages. Yeah, you just feel absolutely immersed. Funny enough, I was doing Dancing with the Stars at the time. And so I took PETA and a bunch of other dancers, and we were all invited by Drew Carey. So of all the people, literally Drew had asked me like 2 months before. He's like, hey man, you ever like to go to Vegas? You gamble at all? At that time I was like, yeah dude, I go to Vegas sometimes, like whatever. And he was like, cool. That was the end of the discussion. 2 months later, I get an email from his assistant going, all right, your rooms are booked at the MGM. You've got a suite here and your tickets are ready to go for EDC. We'll see you this weekend. It's like on a Wednesday and my ticket's for Thursday. And I'm like, I mean, cool, but I got shit to do tomorrow. Can I come Friday? Like, I can make that work. And she's like, no problem. Your room has just been changed to Friday. Like, oh my God, the efficiency of his camp. But then just the weirdest experience, man. Like, a party with Drew, and then a party with the girls from Dancing with the Stars. And it was sick, man, because we'd be up there and then all, you know, literally I had professional dancers with me. Like, no better combination, professional dancers and the best music in the world. So we'd go just run into the crowd and just fucking lose our mind.
Let's finish by just talking a little bit about the record that you've got.
Just came out.
Just came out,
yeah,
that's right. That's
we mostly I did a little tour in Europe and then played a show in Latin America and Mexico, which has been dope. And this is the first time I'm really talking about it in the States. What
are your plans for promoting and for touring? Are you going to play some shows here? Like, where can people who want to hear the music see you and find it online?
Yeah, so it's everywhere online. You can go to iTunes, Spotify, whatnot. Album's called How I Like It. You can look that up or look up James Maslow. Next big thing, I actually just won the Macy's iHeartRadio Rising Star campaign competition, which is pretty badass because I'm doing this independently. I'm doing this one off a label. So self-financed and couldn't be more organic. That's always what I wanted to do for my first solo record. So it's authentic, it's from me, there's no bullshit. Having said that, because I won, I get to play iHeart Vegas in September, which is huge. You know, to be on the same stage as a solo artist as my peers and people that I look up to is amazing. So that's going to be one of the next big things. I'm going to play a little show, I think, in New York, a little one in San Francisco coming up because of that. And then the whole goal is to set up a proper tour in the States, and then probably Latin America as well coming up, hopefully by sometime this year. That really is my goal. Focusing on iHeart right now, and another movie or two we're in talks about. But you know, music is my love. I'm so passionate about it now that I have an album of the most authentic art I've ever created. All I want to do is share it and play. So.
What's up with those dance remixes that are coming down the pipe?
Dude, yeah. So I'm excited about the session with these DJs, Tom and Collins. We might do an original, they might do a remix. Been talking to a few homies that are DJs about doing some remixes on this album.
If you could have anyone of your choice remix a track off the record, who would you tap? Like, which producers would you go after if you had a kind of clear runway, if you will?
I'd have to think about it. I have to kind of like think a little bit more about exactly what they do and how like they would remix mine in particular. But just honestly, based on just the level of talent and youth and creativity, if I were to sit down and take a song and ask Porter Robinson to do something fun to it, I think that'd be pretty badass.
My name is Carrie.
And my name is Carson.
And you're listening to Wide Awake Stories.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that I need to find Drew Carey's table at EDC Las Vegas 2018.
For sure.
That sounds like a party.
My friend Chris Holmes recently said that Drew Carey was one of the nicest guys he's ever met, too.
And he hosts The Price is Right, which is basically the coolest game show on the planet.
I'm going to trade him EDC tickets for The Price is Right tickets.
Damn. Winner.
Yeah.
I don't think he needs free EDC tickets, though.
But I need to get on Price is Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's my life goal, man.
Broadcasting from the Insomniac HQ.
This is Wide Awake Stories.
Next up on the show is a conversation I had with our very own Miss Easy. She is at the forefront of our performer experience here at Insomniac, and she was a performer herself too before she kind of officially joined the family. For anyone who hasn't been to an Insomniac show and kind of doesn't know what I mean when I say performer, not only do we have amazing stuff going on stage, we have carnival rides at a lot of our shows, but the performer element is something that's a huge part of what makes an Insomniac show an Insomniac show. We have dozens and dozens, sometimes hundreds of roaming costumed performers that fit with each vibe of every show that we do, and really the service that they perform at our shows is to pull people out of their shell, to get them to engage with the experience, and to kind of bring what's there up on stage and maybe a little bit untouchable down to their level as something that they can kind of touch and feel and see and put their arms around.
Experience creators.
I'm Miss Easy. I'm the entertainment director at Insomniac. So I'm kind of the creative driving force behind all the performers that everyone sees at all of our events, including EDC. Everything from the concept to creation, it's all from the ground up. We make these really elaborate characters come to life at our festivals that are immersive and interactive with our headliners.
Why do you think it's so important at an Insomniac show where there's so much visual stimulation? You've got massive stages, you've got crazy pyro, you've got lasers everywhere, you've got the people themselves who are eye candy, just walking around everywhere. Why are our performers such an integral role and a unique role of the Insomniac experience, in your opinion?
One of the things that we're able to do with our performers is give our headliners something that feels tangible. It's something that they can reach out and touch. It's the human, relatable aspect of not just looking up at a stage and seeing something amazing, but seeing something right in front of you that you can actually interact with. There are these characters that are building memories and experiences with people just face to face, so it's much more personal, and we're able to bring that down from the stage into the crowd and give people a personal experience that is almost their special moment. So each person gets their own special moment with the performers that they actually stumble upon. They get these authentic kind of one-off memories that I would say are so unique to us. They're so unique to what we're doing.
In addition to what you do now in sort of a leadership role, you've been performing with Insomniac for a long time.
Yeah, I actually started performing at Insomniac in the first LA Coliseum. And at the time, I was organizing the entertainment for the event. It was much smaller then. So it was not the kind of production we're doing now, much smaller, very intimate, which was cool. These are still the kind of experiences I'm trying to bring on a large scale level now. But being able to come and perform at something so amazing like EDC Coliseum in Los Angeles was really our roots and where we started. It was like the time we were able to get the vision for where we're at now.
What I'm still astounded by as someone who's worked with Insomniac for a number of years is the lack of sort of repetition from show to show. You would think, oh, you have Nocturnal Wonderland and Beyond Wonderland and Escape, and they're all sort of, they've got the same DNA at the core, but they're all very different. The performer experience is equally different too. And you have just this wide variety of performers that you see at Nocturnal that you don't see at Escape, performers that you see at Beyond that you don't see at Nocturnal, and vice versa. What is the process like of marrying a festival idea to a performer idea? How does that process work for people who might not be familiar with how these dreams kind of become reality?
So I love the challenge of having branded events like Nocturnal or Beyond Wonderland and knowing that we have this kind of running theme or vibe inside of the show already. And my job is to come in and build what lives inside of that feeling. And so the concepts that we're able to do change so immensely from Daisy Carnival to Beyond. It's really cool for us to be able to create a completely different look for that brand each time.
People think of Insomniac, they think of all this crazy stuff. I don't know if people even think that we sit around in conference rooms and we talk and we look at sketches, but maybe take your average listener through, we're all sitting down in an office, it's the creative kickoff meeting for Beyond 2018. What happens?
My experience when I'm inside of the festival is one of the things I want to do is imagine what works there, what the next thing is that we could do, what's creative, the ideas maybe I've had for a decade that I want to bring to life, or something that was just, I was inspired by a day ago. There are times that I sit with Pasquale as well, and we do talk about what we both want to see there. I love picking his brain about the things that he wants to see or his cool ideas that he wants to have come to life, and I love that challenge. So we'll kind of bounce ideas off of each other and decide where we want the vibe of that event to go and what I can do inside of that. So definitely, I think conceptualizing is the first point for us on this. And then we move into, well, how's it going to look? How's it going to come to life? You know, how are these characters going to talk, walk, act? Where do they live? Where are they from? What do they think? You know, how can we build this entire concept into something that's living and breathing and then put it out inside of the event? So from there, we move into the design phase of sketching everything out, planning it all out. Who's going to make it? You know, do I have to find other creatives that can come in and build this idea that we have, or do I find creatives with beautiful ideas and then collaborate with them and say, this is a fantastic idea for us to bring to something like Daisy Carnival. Now, how can we make this completely ours? You know, how does this thing come to life for us versus it just being on paper? You know, how can we collaborate on this idea and make it completely unique?
What do you think, because these are all positives, right? The creative concept portion, the making things come to life. What do you think are the biggest challenges with this role and really with this element of the festival?
One of the biggest challenges here for us is that we're working on projects that are extremely large scale. So we have a lot on our plate at all times. So really, I think perfecting, because I am a perfectionist, finding a way to make everything as perfect as it can be for us on a level that's that large is something that I think is a huge challenge. So I want to put my heart into everything. I want to have my hands in everything. I don't want to become detached from all of the things that are happening, even though it takes a village for us to make this stuff come to life. I'm just one person in this, and I have to really be kind of the person that's behind the curtain that's directing, so that all of the moving parts are actually moving at the same time and coming to life in the way that we want them to. Casting is also a huge challenge because we have thousands and thousands of applicants, and we go through these elaborate auditions and casting calls and applications, and it's very time consuming, but I like to handpick every person myself. So I'm really paying a lot of attention to the details of what each performer can bring and how to cast them. So not only finding the talent, but nurturing the talent, putting the talent into the role that they serve the best, the thing that brings their talents to life, because all performers have strengths, and you have to be able to see that strength in that performer. And, where you may have a very talented dancer, but on the other hand, you have someone who's a perfect clown, and it's their personality that's showing through. So I have to be able to see that from the get-go and then cast them into the role that does nurture them as an entertainer so that they can really shine.
What are some of the performance troupes or characters that you've been the most proud of? What are your favorites?
That is a hard question to answer because every group that we have is so unique to itself that they all have something to offer. My favorites, just because I lean towards smiling and laughing a lot, and that's something I love to bring to our events, is that imaginary world of joy that we can provide, almost that, take you back to your childhood kind of laughter. So the clown-like characters, the monkeys, anything that has a lot of humor behind it is something I enjoy a lot. So building those types of characters and then training them into that behavior, all the skits, all of the funny things, the interactions that they can do with our headliners, it's really important to me. So I love to nurture that and watch that grow. But we have so many beautiful characters. We have some that are very elegant. At Beyond Wonderland, we have flamingos that are ballerinas, and watching them do point to drum and bass on a stage and hold that kind of stature and beauty, that's something to really be proud of. And it's something that is really special for people to see, because the dichotomy of this music style versus the elegance and the character never breaking. So it's really hard to say what my favorites would be because I enjoy all of them so much.
You think about traditional club culture. You think of Miami, go-go dancers, you think of that level of performer. But what I think is so magical about Insomniac's performers is it flies in the face of that very stereotypical, very marginalized view of what a female performer can bring to a live music experience. And I think what we do and what you do is put forth an image of a female performer that is empowering, funny, super sexy, and completely removed, like the military brats. There's so many different facets of the female image that come to life, and I'm wondering how much of that is something that you actively think about when you cast, when you dream up performers, and when you kind of instruct them or inspire them to go out and do what they do.
The stereotype that women should just be seen and they should be beautiful even as performers is very limiting. And although even as a performer myself throughout my career, I was started on the other side of that, and I was challenged to be that, which was interesting because it was being a performance artist, a very long time ago. It was the thing that I didn't want to be and I never tried to be. And there were times in my career where I realized that to advance, I had to do it all. So I challenged myself to be this beautiful dancer that is the stereotype of what we're talking about. But to just be that, or to think that the characters are just that, is very limiting. And I found that the more we create an environment for them to flourish in, and we support this idea of character creation and the ability to do improv and become this actual entity that we're presenting. Most of the performers, they live for this kind of expression. So you will have the most beautiful characters that turn around and are incredibly funny at the same time. So offering that to these model types even, I find it very interesting that some of them are the funniest, or some of them are the strongest, or some of them are the scariest when we get into escape and they become those creatures. And there is some sort of irony that underneath this creature costume, there is this picturesque, beautiful person, male and female. We have beautiful males that work for us as well. I find that when I see entertainment that is just eye candy, it doesn't keep my attention for very long. Nightclubs and other environments, there's a limited amount you can do with the tools you're given, the space, the length of the event. But inside of our festival environment, we can really let those same entertainers come to life in a completely different way. And often I take these types of entertainers and I challenge them with that. And at the end, they say, that was the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. Thank you for letting me be myself, or letting me learn this process. Or, it's something they become addicted to and they want to come back for over and over again.
So for anyone who's been listening to our conversation and just finds themselves inspired and maybe lives locally or lives in a town where we put on shows, how can they get involved?
We do have auditions here at Insomniac, so those auditions are open. We do have an open door policy. Anyone can attend. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of experience or a little of experience. If you keep up with all of our socials here at Insomniac, we do put out email blasts talking about when auditions are opening up. We also have a newsletter that people can subscribe to for the entertainment department, and this does have recaps and upcoming auditions and the events that we're going to be doing in the future. People who want to apply, I usually start taking applications for the events about a month to a month and a half out. From each event, you can email misseasy@insomniac.com or casting@insomniac.com with your resume, your portfolio, and your demo videos. Obviously, coming in person is the best way because then you really get to show us what you've got. And it's also good to be a part of the community, to show up and meet the other performers and see really what it's all about. So I really encourage people to come in person.
You're tuned in to Wide Awake Stories.
That's okay with me.
You can really tell an Insomniac festival from the photos of the performers. I mean, from other aspects as well, of course, but our performers they are the best. They really are. They're like on level with Cirque du Soleil as far as the quality and creativity of the costumes and just how they take it to the next level. It's like, I used to perform at cabarets and I would see photos of myself next to the drag queens and I was like, oh, I just look sad. Because I would be the most glamorous like woman in the room, but like the drag queens just take it next level with like huge hair and eyebrows that are 2 inches above your actual eyebrows. It's like that. They just stand out, and when you see, photos from anything else, there's just no comparison.
And when you're on the ground, it's easy to get dressed up and look like something, but it's another thing to
become that performer.
Yeah, to be able to like have them suck you into their world, and you just forget about where you are for the moment, and you're living.
Yeah, and think about how much energy they have to harness to be just bouncing around, alive and so full of energy for hours. It's pretty incredible.
They never break character either. If you try to talk to them as a regular person, they'll respond to you in their little clown voices. It's kind of creepy sometimes.
John, I know you don't like dressing up, but I did bring a little present here for you today because I saw your sad eyes when I put this on yesterday.
Is it a Monster Cat sweater?
It is.
Oh,
so Connor, thank you, Connor, from Monster Cat for hooking up the sweater. I put the sweatshirt on, and John looked at me all sad. He's all, "Where'd you get that? Is that a Monster Cat sweater?"
Swagged out.
I just get jealous when people get swag, and I don't.
So I'm giving him my swag, and here's the T-shirt too.
Sick.
Oh,
I'll wear this for Nocturnal.
So much plur in the studio right now.
Thank you, Rob and Connor.
What was that?
There it is.
There it is, Sam.
You know what that means.
I think it's safe to say that everyone in this room has a lifelong affinity to dance music.
Yep.
Correct.
And I'm always interested in kind of tracing back to what started it all. For everyone, there's always that one moment or one track that kind of spawned this love for the culture and community. For me, I was in middle school and I would record these mixes on Power Tools and kind of play them back throughout the week. But it wasn't until I found ATB's 9 p.m. Till I Come, which is kind of worlds away from what I'm listening to now, but that's what opened the floodgates for me. So I linked up with a few of the artists at Audiotistic to kind of capture a snapshot of what turned them onto dance music. So I got with Habstrakt, Ghastly, and Joyryde to hear all about the music that put them on.
Yo, my name is Habstrakt. I come all the way from south of France. Been DJing for like 10 years, producing for 10 years. I don't even know where to start, man. It's been an amazing trip. It's been an amazing couple of years ever since I made it to the US and been playing shows and festivals over here. My journey with electronic music, when you come from France, you have this culture that's really, really strong, and you have the relation to electronic music that's really, really strong, thanks to people like Daft Punk and Justice and Mr. Oiseau and labels like Ed Banger and Institubes and so many like that. So to me, when I was really young, there's one song that got me into electronic music and made me realize that that's the thing I wanted to do, is that song from Mr. Oiseau called Fiat Beat. It's from the 90s. It's a really, really old song. I was young and I was playing guitar and piano, and I wanted to be in a band, and my friend was playing bass, another one was playing drums, and I think we could never get along on what we wanted to do together. So, and I heard that, and I realized it was just one guy in his bedroom making this music, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to like self-contain myself and just make a song all by myself that's got drums, that's got like a bass line, that's got even lyrics if you want, and everything. Mr. Oiseau to me was one of my first influences, with Daft Punk obviously. And it's funny because if you look at it now, the bass line from that song, it's a wobble, you know, like 10, 15 years later you have dubstep coming in, womp, 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 those songs like that. And he did that 10 years before everyone else, and that was really inspiring for us. Yeah, I can say French people, we're sitting on a really big electronic music culture that's really wide, but really is also really defined by the roots we have, the hip-hop vibes we have, the education we get, and you know, it's a different vibe. It's really, really personal, and we're all really proud of that. We all stick to that. We never forget our roots. Every French producer out there will tell you the same, I guess. Yeah.
I go by Ghastly. I just finished a very, very awesome set here at Audiotistic. I had a fucking blast. Blah, blah, blah. Follow your dreams. I mean, I feel like everything can technically be dance music these days. If we're referring to the time and period in which dance music was something that was purely electronic, I guess it would have to be the Mortal Kombat theme song and Eiffel 65, I'm Blue. Those songs had a pumping rhythm that made me realize that not all songs have to be recorded live. Then Sandstorm came into my existence. It already existed, but then my existence collided with it. When I listened to properly produced music on the radio, I used to always think like, how the fuck are these guys literally playing kick drums and blah, 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 so perfectly on time, and it sounds so good. And I didn't realize that there was this thing called audio workstations where you could just put things in the place that they needed to be. And that's how these pop songs were so good. I didn't know that. So I would just like write electronic music on my my keyboard by playing it live through a recorder. Like, that was how I even got into that shit. Then I found Ableton, and it's like, wow, you can just put things on time. You don't have to work your ass off and make sure it's perfectly with the tempo. Then everything kind of like went in the proper direction from there.
This is Joyryde. My musical influences before dance music would have been
a few indie bands from the UK, massive bands like Blur and Oasis. There's a smaller band called The Wonder Stuff. They were great. I suppose the bridge between those two worlds were the band The Prodigy. That was the bridge that sort of went from live music or just music in general to the electronic world, because I always thought that they were more of a performance piece. It didn't strike me that this is made in the studio or it's electronic. That wasn't the headline with them, you know. Yeah, just regular bands and stuff before, you know. I wasn't into anything underground in the band world, in the music world, until maybe some like hip hop and trip hop stuff, you know. I used to skateboard, so they've had countless throughout their career. But for me, it was probably just the earliest stuff that they did, like even before I was going to parties and going to raves and going to all of that. Things like Outer Space or Wind It Up, records like that. They on their first album, they had this inside the cover of the CD was this mural. It's like a painting, and it was just sort of folded out, so it was really, really wide painting. On one side of this canyon was the police and riot officers and dogs and batons and you know, like SWAT cars and a city sort of smoking, and then there was this big kind of canyon ravine and a rope ladder, and on the other side was this festival of all these hippies standing raving, and one guy standing right at the side of the bridge with a big machete, like he's going to cut the rope not to let him over, you know. When you see that and you don't understand what's going on, I was like, what, 8 years old, 9 years old? When you see that, you understand, you got a snapshot of something, you know, that you never understood before. Like, this music was, they were having raves, and I guess the police was trying to shut them down. You know what I mean? You start to get it. And when I heard those records and saw those images and started to imagine, because it was all in my imagination, I didn't know what it was really like to do parties or raves, and that just too profound, you know, it just changed everything for me. It was so intriguing. I'm still chasing that until today.
Pay close attention. Hi, my name's Charlie Huff, and I'm from Arizona. Thank you for listening to Wide Awake Stories.
Nocturnal is the next show up. The Wide Awake team will be out there in full force. We will see you out there in the campgrounds. We'll be coming through the campgrounds, walking through the stages, waking you up while you sleep on the floor.
Eating your food.
All those things. Eating your food, drinking your tequila.
If you have a story you want to share with us, find us on Facebook and Twitter at insomniac.com, all spelled out, Insomniac, DOTCOM, or just use the hashtag WideAwakeStories.
So funny enough, after Monica gave out our Wide Awake hotline numbers, we got a call straight away from someone who, I don't know. I don't know if this is Paul. They're saying they're Paul Oakenfold, listening to the show. I have my doubts, but we'll play it for you anyway and see what you guys think.
Hello, Insomniac. It's Paul Oakenfold. I was calling to follow up and see if you guys wanted my tequila. I'm having some for breakfast right now. It's quite enjoyable with coffee, and I think you'd enjoy it, and all your patrons would enjoy it. Very high quality tequila. Call me back, somebody.
Definitely not Paul.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably not Paul.
Sounds like every British dude I've ever met.
But a really bad imitation of every British person you've ever met. I'm going to say that's not Paul.
But I am going to say that's why we're drinking Paul's tequila today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. We really do appreciate it. Next weekend, we got Nocturnal ready to go for y'all. We'll be out there in full force. Look for us in our Wide Awake Stories shirts. Not sure if we'll have the tequila with us, though, but maybe back at the hotel.
No, we'll come drink yours.
There you go. Yeah, that's a better wow.
So if you do see us at Nocturnal Wonderland with our mics and our Wide Awake Stories shirts, come find us and tell us your story. We want to hear from you.
See you guys next month.